Well, very, very, very good Saturday morning. Excuse me. Welcome to the Baffled Brain, Demystifying Dementia, the bi-weekly podcast that will teach you everything you need to know about dementia. Today is September the 11th, 2021. It is so difficult to believe that it has actually been 20 years since 9/11. Within the next hour or so, 2 hours, it all transpired, right? I remember what I was doing. I'm sure you do too, if you were old enough to remember what's going on. So today is September the 11th, 2021, and this is episode 37. I'm doing 2 programs a week now, one on a Saturday, one on a Thursday night, and so this is episode 37. I am your host, Lizette Cloete from Think Different Dementia, where we teach you to think different about dementia so you can thrive and not just survive your dementia journey. Good morning. It is early on a Saturday morning in sunny South Carolina. Well, thank you for being here. If you're watching live, please put in the comments live. If you're watching on replay, please put in the comments replay. If you're watching live and you actually have a question for me, put it in the comments and I will actually answer them as we are going through the program. I have 7 questions that I have for today. My goal is to actually answer 500 dementia-related questions in 2021, and I'm at around 317, I think it was this morning when I counted. So my goal is 500 dementia-related questions in 2021 in this group. So welcome. Today is the first question I'm going to answer is actually from a lady in South Africa. And I don't know if you guys know much about my history or my background. If you've been watching me before, I'm sure you've heard me say this. If you haven't, if you're new to the program, I am originally from South Africa. I graduated from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. And this first question is from a lady by the name of, I got to find her name, Toby from South Africa. So I'm going to summarize the question here first. Let's talk about daytime sleepiness or sleeping during the daytime. What are some potential causes and how to manage this in people with dementia? So here is her question that she actually asked in this group earlier on this week. She says, "Thank you for being able to answer our questions." I love that. She's noticed over the past 3 weeks that her mom-in-law, who she provides care to, sleeps a whole lot during the day. This never used to happen before. She's normally in bed for the night around 8 p.m. and is up at 6:30 in the morning, but she's now literally spending most of her days sleeping. The minute she sits in the sofa, she passes out. Should I be worried? Is this normal in dementia patients or people living with dementia? And Toby says that her mother-in-law is 69 years old. So yet again, let's talk about daytime sleepiness or sleeping during the daytime, potential causes, how to manage this in people with dementia. So let's talk about that for a second. So what are some reasons this could be happening, right? She's excessively sleepy. Do we need to take a look at her medication? That's one of the first places that I would start to look at. Medication can have a profound effect on older people, older adults. Our older adults' liver doesn't metastasize medication as easily as it did when, when we're younger, right? And a lot of times, medication, if you read through the long, dirty list of side effects, right? A lot of medication has cognitive impairment and sleepiness as side effects. So the first place I would start with is looking at somebody's medication. If it's a sudden change or if it's been something you've just noticed gradually, I would definitely start to look at medication Is there a new medication? Did medication change? What kind of things regarding medication can we start with? Now, she mentions that her mother-in-law sleeps. It sounds like she sleeps really well at night. She goes to bed at 8 o'clock at night and gets up at 6:30 in the morning. So if it's not a medication issue, what other things can be causing daytime sleepiness, right? So it sounds like her mother-in-law is sleeping well during the night. So it's not because she's necessarily sleepy that she is sleeping during the day. But sometimes it can be because people are, as we go through the process of dementia, our what's called our executive functions start to decrease. Our ability to plan, our ability to initiate things, our ability to organize things, time management, time regulation, things like emotional regulation, those kinds of things. So if somebody is maybe sleeping a lot more during the day and it's not medication and it's not because they're sleeping throughout, not sleeping at night, right? Maybe she is sleeping during the daytime because she is bored. She doesn't have anything to do. And just because people have dementia or people have difficulty with their thinking doesn't take the desire to do things away. It just means that sometimes they cannot actually initiate doing things for themselves. So what'll happen is the person will still have the desire. And let me use this as an analogy, right? Think about everything we do every single day, right? Saturday today, I'm going to take my husband out for an activity later on today. I'm doing this live presentation first thing in the morning, got all dollied up, put my makeup on. I am going to be working on a presentation that I'm going to be doing later on. I'm going to feed my chickens. All of these are things that I do, and most of them are things I enjoy doing, especially taking care of my chickens. I love my chickens, right? So these are activities that I enjoy doing. Now, imagine I all of a sudden start to have difficulty with my thinking. And it's not that I've stopped liking doing those things. It might be that I have just stopped being able to initiate on my own being able to do those things. But if somebody were to walk with me, for example, my husband, walk with me and say, hey, Lizette, let's go outside. Let's go feed the chickens. It's time to feed the chickens. And here, let's go take out the eggs and help me do that and bring them in and pick them up for me so I can still cuddle my chickens. I would more likely be able to do those tasks with somebody walking with me. So when people have dementia, it's not that they lose all of a sudden the ability, the desire to do those things. It's just that sometimes they've lost the ability to do those things. And so what I would say, Toby, is that that maybe your mother-in-law needs you or your husband or the family to step in and provide her with what we call in my world as an occupational therapist, meaningful activities. Anything that we do can be a meaningful activity, things that we have always enjoyed doing, things that we, even normal daily tasks can be meaningful. And way back when I first started, we always talked about it had to be age appropriate. Well, thankfully, I'm very grateful for this. Things have kind of moved away from age appropriate now to what's meaningful to the individual. So if your mother-in-law always liked to cook, I would try to engage her or re-engage her in cooking. And it can look in a vastly different way, right? It doesn't mean that you send her to the kitchen and say, hey, Mom, go cook a meal and expect her to plan it out, go grocery shopping, do the whole thing. It may mean that you simple it down, you make it easier for her by just giving her parts of the task. So say you're doing you want to make breakfast, right? You're doing a breakfast activity and you want to make scrambled eggs. And so maybe she can't go to the fridge, get out the eggs, decide how many to put in for 6 people, all of these decisions that you have to make for going and doing a cooking task. But maybe you can set it up and give her the bowl and give her the 6 eggs and say, here, break these eggs into this bowl and have her break the eggs. And then say, okay, Mom, here's the thing, now I can only think of the Afrikaans word because we're talking about somebody in South Africa. Here, beat the eggs for me, right? And step by step sequence her through it. So daytime sleepiness, this is where we started. Daytime sleepiness. What are potential causes and how to manage this in people with dementia? So to recap the question, I said if it's not medication related and it's obviously that this person's loved one is sleeping well during the night, then maybe it's because she's not being engaged in activities throughout the day. And you got to remember, the television is a passive activity. A television is not something that's actively engaging our brain. So I would start, Toby, with trying to re-engage her in activities that she has always done. They don't have to be long. And, we want to think about it. Maybe we want to do 15 minutes and let her go sit down again. And then a half hour later, do another 15 minutes and let her go, try to engage her, make some, to make it easier for yourselves. Here's another suggestion that you could do, is you can pre-make some activity boxes, right? Some things that you've put together that give her something to do, that engage her in her environment that she would have enjoyed, maybe coloring books, Sudoku, make little boxes of different activities, but then you initiate it for her. You say, okay, let's go do this together, and maybe sit for the first couple of minutes together with her. And there's a lot of information that can go into how to structure these tasks. And that's not what this program today is about. But that's what I do, is how to break it down and make it easier for people at whatever level. Make it easier or make it harder, right? So I would start with that, Miss Toby. I would start with trying to actively re-engage her in her environment. People with dementia don't lose the desire to do things. They just lose the ability to initiate, to do things for themselves. So let's start with that. If you're watching this live, please comment live. If you have a question and you're on live, please ask it in the comments. I love to answer questions. That's what this program, this broadcast is about, is to actually answer your questions if you have particular questions. Otherwise, I have pre-prepared questions, which is the format that I've gone to. If you're watching this and you haven't joined my Facebook group, I have a separate Facebook group called Think Different Dementia, where Think Different Dementia Education Group. I encourage you to join the group. I do a lot of education in that group as well. The purpose of the group is just education. So I invite you to join me. Please invite your friends if you're part of the group. Thank you for being part of the group. And here is the next question. So if nobody has a question that's on live, I will keep going with my pre-prepared questions. I love it if you guys ask me questions, so please ask questions. So the next question has to do with care companion depression, loneliness, and feelings of helplessness, and what to do about it. I thought that, this really struck me, and I'll read the person's comments in a second here. But being a care companion is hard. It is definitely hard, and I don't know if I kind of share this throughout. I not only am a occupational therapist, but I have two parents and two children, right? I have a mom and a dad and my two girls. So I'm nicely in the sandwich generation. I will be 51 in 2 weeks. And my mom had a stroke when she was very, very young. She was 42 years old. I was 18. Going on 19 when she had her stroke. And so as she's been aging with her she had an aneurysm. It was a massive stroke. Very dynamic woman, very motivated, smart, intelligent, highly educated, phenomenal woman. And she had a stroke at 42, which is very, very hard, right? And so subsequent to her stroke, and even though it's not necessarily diagnosed, it's obvious to me that my mom has some form of a vascular dementia. So I am you. You and I are the same. I'm the sandwich generation. I have children that I'm trying to help and support. They're both out of the house. but I'm trying to help and support my parents. So when I read about a care person, a care partner, a care companion that is depressed, lonely, feeling helpless, and doesn't know what to do about it, it just breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. And so I'm going to read what this person had written, and then I'm going to answer the question to the best of my abilities. She says, is it wrong to feel so lonely and sorry for myself when my family and friends can just go out when they want and I'm stuck at home looking after my husband, cannot go anywhere or do just anything? I'm feeling so down and so low, and I know I will probably feel better tomorrow, I hope. And her name is Josie. So the first thing I want to say is, Josie, I am so sorry you're feeling that way. It truly is. It truly does break my heart. There are a lot of things that you need to do for yourself, and that's how I'm going to answer the question. Care companion, depression, loneliness, feelings of helplessness, and what to do about it. So the first thing I'm going to say is, I am not a proponent for medication necessarily. However, having said that, there is a time and a place for medication. Medication, the first thing you need to look at is, have you, Josie, been screened for depression? Because depression in people with, providing care for people with dementia is very high. I believe, if I remember the statistics correctly, 50% of care partners, care companions of people with dementia have depression themselves. It is a real thing. And then also, people who are providing care to other people are also more likely to have their own health concerns start to be a problem. And so this is something that, Josie, we do need to take seriously. Yes, I know that we all have good days and bad days. I have good days and bad days, right? Some days I just wake up in a funk. It's nobody's fault. It's nothing. It may just be hormonal. Who knows? I didn't sleep well, didn't eat properly. Eating properly and sleeping well can play a tremendous role in our own ability to feel better, right? To feel better about ourselves. And so the first thing I would start with, Josie, is that you, as a care companion of your husband, we need to look at it in this light, right? Most of us have flown at some point in our lives. Most of us have flown. And so when you're on an airplane and they are doing the safety presentation at the beginning, they always start with, the what to do in case of an emergency, right? And so if you're flying with a child, or if you're flying with a companion that needs assistance, the instructions on the from the flight is the following. If something happens, if the papaya hits the fan and we're going down, Houston, and the oxygen masks fall down, what's the first thing you do? You don't put it on the person that you're helping, right? You put it on yourself. Why is that? Because if you don't take care of yourself first and you pass out on that airplane, the person you're helping is not able to do it for themselves. So so you're a spouse, you mentioned your husband, and you mentioned that you feel like you're stuck and you cannot go anywhere. So the first thing you have to start to do, Josie, is you've got to go talk to your physician and be screened for depression yourself. And then the second thing, because we've got to get you help. If it truly is, and it's not just a one-day thing, but it's truly, like I said, a lot of people who care for people who have dementia, 50% of care companions actually have depression themselves, and make it so that they are unable to actually take care of themselves. And nobody is addressing that. We have to address the care companion. We have to address your needs first, right? So we have to put the oxygen mask on you first, Josie. So the first thing is you need to be screened for depression. The second thing is there's a hierarchy of needs for being a caregiver. And this is the hierarchy of needs that I base it off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The first thing we have, and always the base of the pyramid, is the most important. The top of the pyramid is what we're striving for, right? But the most important thing is always the base of the pyramid. So what is the most important? If you're a care companion, what is the priority of how you take care of someone else? The first thing you have to do is you have to take care of the household. You have to be able to get groceries, food, shelter, clothing, right? You have to be able to wash the laundry. You have to be able to set up the medication. You have to be able to change the bed sheets, do the grocery shopping, pay the bills. Those are always, that's the foundation. Because if the household doesn't function, nobody functions. And how I came about this was about, it's got to be almost 20 years ago now. My husband and I worked in a hospital in Branson, Missouri, and I had the privilege of meeting some super people, and they had the financial means. He and his wife came to visit his sister who lived in Branson, and he was 75. He was my patient. He was 75, and he was married to a 40-year-old Taiwanese, 35-year-old Taiwanese woman. And they had come to visit his sister, and he had crashed and burned and got really, really super sick. And so the family had the means to help provide for him, and they wanted to see if they could make it back to Taiwan. But he had a feeding tube, and so he couldn't go to an assisted living. So I made an arrangement with the family that I provided 24-hour care for him and his wife in my home for about 3 months to see if we could get him good and strong enough and get her competent enough to take care of him by herself in an assisted living. And we were able to do that. But what I found out as an occupational therapist, you teach people to do things, but then, it came home to roost with me. And I'm like, the household's not going well because I don't have time to cook. So the household has to function first. If the household does not function, nobody else functions. You have to have that as the priority. Then the second priority, if you're a care companion to someone, is you, not the person you're caring for. And we flip-flop these. We put the person who we are caring for as the primary most important thing, and then the household, and then the care companion, and that's the wrong way to do it. It's the household first, it's the care companion second, and then it's the person with dementia, because you can only provide care for somebody with dementia out of a full container, right? So, Miss Josie, you say you feel lonely and sorry for yourself, and like I said, we need you to get screened for depression and take care of that. Then the second thing is we need to put some strategies in place for you, right? So what kind of things can we do? We have our normal natural support system, right? Sometimes those are family and friends. If your family and friends are not the people who are going to step up and do that, then we've got to find other natural supports, right? What kind of other natural supports are out there that we don't always think about to tap? Church. Are there people in church? Can you come up with the care calendar? Can you go to the deacons at church and say, here's my needs. I need somebody to come sit with Bruce, your husband, making up a name. I need somebody to come sit with Bruce for 3 hours Monday afternoon from 2 to 5 so I can go get my hair done. I need somebody to come and take him out for lunch every Wednesday, whatever it is, but you have to build it, right? You cannot just assume that people know what you need. You have to ask them. And if they're not willing to do it, then you keep asking until you find somebody who is willing to do it. So those are some of the natural supports that you can use. There's an app called CareZare, CareZare. It's an app that you can download that you can use to start to structure care. And you just need to start to be assertive and tell people, this is what I need. We assume that people can see what we need because we live it every day. And a lot of people are willing to help you. They may just really not know that you need the help. So what I would encourage you, Josie, to do is try to set up like some structured respite. The big fancy word for that is respite care for yourself. If your family and friends and church cannot help, and you can afford it, then I recommend that you try to find a formal care provider to come in and just spell you. And sometimes you just have to say, to the person who you're supporting, your husband, I'm sorry, I have to do this for me, and you have to leave. Because if you burn out, then he's in a sanity wish list. Yes, that's a good description. A sanity wish list. I like that. So I would love for you to try these strategies. Let me know how they go. That's the purpose of this. So I hope that is helpful. So the next question, Alzheimer's first and then dementia, or is it the other way around? So the question is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, right? So this person asked, Armida asked, so does Alzheimer's come first and then dementia, or is it the other way around? And this is this is a great question. I'm going to do it in a very short format because there's a lot that can go into Alzheimer's and dementia. But bottom line is, Armida, that the best way to describe it is as follows. Dementia, the word dementia, is an umbrella term. It literally means out of one's mind. That's just what the Latin word dementia just means, out of your mind, right? And so it is an umbrella term that goes over multiple different types of dementia. So I actually took the course yesterday to be able to teach people to become certified dementia practitioners. I cannot say the big fat long word because it's been too long. The Alzheimer's disease and dementia care course, the seminar to become a CDP. So I took that course yesterday, and they mentioned in that course that there are, under the term dementia, there are upwards of 100 different types of dementia. So Alzheimer's is one type. It's one very particular type of dementia. But there are multiple different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is just one, and not everybody has Alzheimer's, and not everybody who has dementia look the same. And like we say a lot, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. There are a lot of characteristics that are common. There are a lot of things that are unique to each person who has dementia. And why is that? Because we're all unique individuals, right? Everybody's different. My brain works differently than yours. I'm left-handed, you might be right-handed. So each person, based on all of their own unique factors, cultural, physical, everything makes a person different. Their own experiences, right? How they grew up, where they grew up, all of these things make a person unique. Well, because of all of your own uniqueness, when somebody has dementia, they look different than somebody else who has dementia, even though they may have common characteristics. So back to answer the question, Armida, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Alzheimer's, like dementia, is a umbrella term, and Alzheimer's is a type. So under the types of dementia, there are up to 100 different types of dementia. And Alzheimer's is one, vascular dementia is one, Lewy body dementia is one, Parkinson's disease dementia is one, frontotemporal dementia is one, mixed dementia is one, all of these different little buckets of different types of dementia. And each one has its different characteristic, and each one looks different when they start, and each one kind of changes and progresses differently over time. But that, in a nutshell, is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. So dementia is the umbrella term, meaning out of your mind. And then Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So Armida, I hope that helps you. Let me know if you have any other questions regarding dementia and Alzheimer's. I'm very happy to answer them. If you're watching this live, please comment live. If you're watching this on replay, please comment replay. If you have questions and you're on the live stream, please ask questions. This is the format that I have, is actually to answer your questions. So if somebody posts a question in the comment, I will answer it to the best of my ability. My name is Lizette. I'm an occupational therapist by background in training. I started my company called Think Different Dementia because I want people to think different about dementia. I started to notice in a lot of these groups that there's just so much doom and gloom. And yes, it is challenging. I get that dementia is not an easy process, but it is not all just doom and gloom. And there is so much that we can do to help people actually thrive during this journey and not just barely survive, right? So I would love for you to reach out for me. If you're not a part of my Facebook group, it's called Think Different Dementia Education Group. Please join the group and come listen. I do some extra trainings in there sometimes. I answer questions in there. So please, that is the purpose of this program. So the next question, if nobody on live has any particular questions for me, is we have another question. It's called, briefly talking about sundowning, why it happens and what we can do about it. So sundowning, why it happens and what we can do about it. So here is the person's question from earlier on. And I'm not going to go into medication or supplements about this, but she said, what kind of medications or supplements are good for a person that is sundowning? I'm not going to go into medication because I'm not a prescribing provider, even though I do know a fair amount about medication. I'm not going to talk about what kind of medication particularly to give somebody who is sundowning, because that's a question for a physician or a nurse practitioner that can prescribe. But we are going to talk a little bit about sundowning and something that, strategies and things that we can help people to sleep or calm people down. So what is sundowning? So sundowning is a term that describes really a lot of different symptoms. It's kind of like an umbrella term too, right? For a lot of changes that people who have Alzheimer's, it's more common with Alzheimer's disease than other dementias. But what sundowning does, what happens with sundowning, and there's a lot of speculation as to what causes it, what doesn't cause it, etc. But it's like anything with dementia. When people have dementia, we kind of want to be a dementia detective. We want to start to look down and doing. I think her name was Sandra. Yes, Miss Sandra. So Sandra, what we want to do with these kinds of things is I would recommend that you start what's called a dementia diary, or a dementia or a behavior log, or a dementia diary, whatever term you want to use. That we use them interchangeably, right? And really, any type of what we call challenging behavior, that's the medical term, right? A challenging behavior like sundowning or repetitive questioning is one of the ones we're going to talk about in a minute. Why do these things happen? It's because the person with dementia is trying to communicate something to us. They've lost the ability to communicate the way you and I are communicating right now, where we can dialogue, right? You can talk to me, you can ask me a question, you can type it into the comments, and we can have a dialogue, right? We are created beings that have been created to have a dialogue with one another. And our ability to dialogue with one another starts when we're an infant. Why do we talk to our babies, right? We teach them a dialogical principle. When they go ga 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 goo, and we say, hey honey, how are you? Hi, ach, kyk hoe lyk dit vandag. Kyk hoe, ach, maar jy is pragtig. Whatever baby talk, whatever we talk to babies when we're holding them and they're cooing and they're smiling, and they smile at us and we smile at them, right? That's how we teach somebody to have a dialogue, right? Or communicate with us. Now, people with dementia still have needs, right? And they're trying to communicate those needs to us. And it's called the unmet need principle. And there are two types of unmet needs. There's a physical unmet need. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm constipated, I'm sleepy, And then there's an emotional unmet need, right? I'm scared, I'm lonely, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, I'm feeling lost. All of these types of things are what a person with dementia who has lost the ability to communicate the way we've always communicated. And we see this, like, for example, too, in other, it's not just in dementia. We see these types of things in other things like schizophrenia, or think about a child who has autism who does repetitive head banging or self-soothing or whatever. They have an unmet need that they cannot communicate. And so when we have somebody who is sundowning, they may have an unmet need that's not being communicated. Are we sleeping too much during the day? Are we not sleeping enough? Are they overstimulated? Are they understimulated? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they feeling lost? So, Sandra, the best way to manage, are they getting their day-night cycles mixed up because we're letting them go to bed, we're letting the person sleep 3/4 of the day, and then they're awake wild and woolly at night. But the term sundowning just is to describe whatever presentation. I don't want to use the word symptom, but whatever presentation, each individual person's sundowning will look different than somebody else, right? Somebody may pace. Somebody may ask repetitive questions. Somebody may start to scream out or yell or cuss or bite, whatever. Sundowning, the term sundowning is also more like a descriptive term of whatever symptoms that person is demonstrating. So try to diarize, Sandra. Try to write down, and remember, when you're doing a behavior diary, you want to diarize the good things, and you, on the good days when things are going well, when the person is, for example, not sundowning, and you want to diarize the bad days. What happened? Who was there? What time of day? Very specific. The more specific you can be about the circumstances around, were certain care companions that were there. Was I had a patient recently that her husband takes wonderful care of her. They've been married since she was 14 years old. It's lovely, lovely story. And it was her birthday, and they had all their family came for, they actually cooked hash, which if you're from South Carolina, you know what that is. If you're not from South Carolina, don't worry about it. But they were cooking hash, and they had a huge, big family gathering. And for the next 3 days, she was wild and woolly, out to lunch, right? And so we had a definitive way that we could look back and say, okay, this was the precipitating event, right? So even good events can cause a person with dementia to have these changes in their behavior. And remember, all behavior, mine included, right? When I'm having a bad day, like, my behavior changes based off of my mood, and it's also because I have an unmet need. Even though I can communicate, right? I have an unmet need. I am tired. I am hungry, hangry, whatever it is, right? So we want to make sure that when we're trying to look at what we technical term called the challenging behavior, what the challenging behavior is, that we remember that the person with dementia is trying to communicate with us. They are trying to communicate something, and it's our job to figure it out. They can't tell us anymore. If they could tell us, they would tell us. But just because a person cannot tell you doesn't mean that they aren't feeling something deeply. And it's very interesting. It's those emotional responses that remain retained for a very long time. People with dementia are like a sponge. They'll suck up your feelings. So if you're frustrated or angry or tired, Sandra, or if you're, if they can sense that, it could be because of that. So that was just kind of to talk a little bit about sundowning, Sandra. So I hope this was helpful to you. And so we have a couple more questions. I see somebody said, Middag Lizette. Hoe gaan dit? I'm from South Africa originally, so ek hoop dit is lekker lente daar by julle. Dit raak nou herfsie by ons, dit raak nou 'n bietjie kouer. So welcome from South Africa. And so let's talk about what the next question is. So the next question we're going to talk about today is repetitive questioning in someone with dementia that's causing anger in their care companion and what you can do about that. So we kind of touched on this a little bit in the previous question, right? This person, her name is Dana, said she needs some advice. Her dad has dementia and her mom is her primary care partner, care companion. She says that when Dana goes to visit her mom is constantly telling her dad not to repeat himself. She tells him that he has asked the question too many times. We are family, and I told her mom it doesn't bother me, and he doesn't remember. I have a hard time visiting because she is angry. How do I handle this? Well, that is very, very, very packed, right? Repetitive questioning can be very challenging for care companions because it's like, oh my word, you've asked that 1,000 times before, 1,000 times before. So I know repetitive questioning can be very challenging to people, but back to the answer to the previous question where we were talking about sundowning, all of these strategies are very similar. I know it seems like they should all have a different approach, but really how you help someone who's living with dementia is pretty consistently the same. We want to look at so there are three factors that usually play together. Like we said, an unmet need. Repetitive questioning is somebody trying to communicate something with us and possibly an unmet need, or there's a change in what's going on around them that has triggered that behavior. And it is very hard when you're living with somebody and they're asking you the same question over and over and over again, to keep answering that question over and over and over again. But guess what? You have to, because we want to try to make that person feel safe. And the more you actually answer those questions out of a loving, kind, relaxed, I'm not getting frustrated for you asking these questions repetitively spirit, because the person with dementia, like I said a few minutes ago, is literally like a sponge. They suck up all the emotion in the room. They've lost their, the reason that happens is because part of our executive functioning is emotional regulation. And there are two ways that we regulate our emotions. We regulate them ourselves, or what's called an internal locus of control. I internally control my emotions, right? I can wake up and it doesn't matter what's going on around me. I can control my emotions. And that's what we all strive to be or have as an adult, right? When we have a child who's a young child who's developing and they don't have an internal locus of control, they throw the temper tantrum in the supermarket, right? So when we have people with dementia, as they are losing their executive function and they're losing their ability to control their emotions, they start to have an external locus of control. So when I, as a care companion, and I tell my dad this we have lunch with them every Sunday, and I literally tell my dad this every Sunday, Dad, you got to chill. You got to take a chill pill, because my mom asks some repetitive questions because she forgets that she's asked the same question. And my dad gets frustrated, and, frustration is just anger in disguise, right? So my dad gets frustrated with her, and I'm like, when he does, it just makes it worse, right? So, Miss Dana, back to your question. Your dad has dementia and your mom is his care companion. And so we want to diarize again too. when are these things happening, right? The more information, I tell people all the time, you want to be a dementia detective. You want to figure out what's going on. Your coming to visit might be the trigger. Like for me on a Sunday when I go visit my mom and dad, I'm pretty sure that just me coming to visit every Sunday, even though it's a routine thing, triggers my mom to ask these repetitive questions. And then we have, because she doesn't remember that and I just patiently, as much as possible, patiently just try to re-answer her question. And I just answer it in the same way, like it never happened. And so a few things, Dana, I would say you might need to start to look at things just a little bit differently. I challenge you to look at it a little bit differently. Maybe your mom needs a break, right? We talked earlier in the program about making sure that a care companion is taken care of. So maybe your mom truly just needs a break. Have you guys implemented some formal, structured respite times for your mom so she can breathe? Right? She's with him 24 hours a day. You are not. I'm not with my mom 24 hours a day. And so I would challenge you to maybe think about what can you do to support your mom in her journey with your dad on the repetitive questioning. And then care companions have different levels of readiness. Each person's level of readiness to change is different. You might be more ready to change and see what's going on with your dad than what your mom might be. But the best way to help your mom is to provide her with education. How do we do that, right? I invite you to invite your mom to my Facebook group called Think Different Dementia Education Group so she can learn, try to get her to be able to find an Alzheimer's association or a dementia support group in the area so she can learn and ask questions. I would for sure try to be supporting your mom. You got to put your mom in a little bubble wrap, right? We got to protect her. She's the primary care companion. And how we do that is we want to put in some formal structures, right? So I know that was a broad answer. I can only answer these questions very broadly because it's not one-on-one. But I hope that helps you, Miss Dana. And there is a question out on the Facebook Live. So let me read it real quick. I'll read it to you guys. When a patient's family is visiting her, and she is happy and sparkle, and when they leave, she is angry and stubborn. Why? That's a very good question. So I would presume, based off of the description here in the comments, that this person is maybe a formal care provider either in a facility or a formal care provider in somebody's home, and that the person that she or he is caring for is living. And she's helping them, and then they have family come, and when they leave, they're angry and stubborn. Why? So I'm very cautious about saying somebody is necessarily stubborn. I think we're all stubborn. This is just my opinion. I just think we're all stubborn for different reasons, right? And we're stubborn about different things. So my stubborn may look different than yours. I may be stubborn about one thing and somebody else may be stubborn about something else. But stubborn is a very high functioning thing. When people are being stubborn, they are trying to meet a need. And so probably what is happening, in my opinion, is that when her family is there, she's very excited and is using a lot of her emotional reserves. Remember what I said earlier on people with dementia, their emotional ability remains retained for a very long time. It's the thing that we probably hardly lose until the very end. Or we lose it. We lose it slower than we lose our actual thinking skills and memory. But we will always remember our feelings, right? And so oftentimes, because our emotions are seated in a different part of the brain, And so as a person's emotion, so she's able to regulate her emotions when her family is visiting her at that moment in time. And she may have just used up everything, all of her reserves, everything that she has. And then what's left is frustration, fatigue, brain fog, confusion. And so I would recommend you try to meet that need. Is she, why is she angry? Is she angry because they've left and she feels abandoned? She doesn't feel comfort. Go to the underlying emotion and try to give her comfort. Try to, and comfort comes in a variety of different ways, right? It's not always what we say, it's how we are. It's touching, appropriate touching. And only if the person's receptive to, say, a hug or, stroking their hand or whatever technique or whatever way that you can show them that they are still loved and cared for. And so that's where I would start with this. I hope that was helpful. I have two more questions, I think. Two more questions today, unless somebody has another question on the live stream. So let's talk a little bit about validation. And that's kind of what this previous question sort of touched on just a little bit. So here's a statement came from Tempest. Tempest was the person who wrote this earlier on. She says, I finally got my mom to the doctor after months of begging and reminding and making the appointment myself. She drove 3 hours to take her to the doctor. Her mom did not recognize her when she arrived. Her mom didn't remember the appointment, even despite reminders daily, sometimes multiple times a day. She says, my mom never remembered asking me to make the appointment. And then she says, my mom totally failed the doctor's memory test, couldn't name the day of the week, the month, the year, the season. The hardest part was explaining over and over and over why we went to the doctor and her mom's random outbursts of anger to me. Doing it all an hour later again because she forgot, so repetitive questioning. And then her mom makes voicemails to her that's not making sense. She's confusing her sister, her daughter with being her sister, Tempest with being her aunt, being delusional, denying that she's made the phone call. She says, this is so hard, I hate it. And we just started today. Today is diagnosis day 1. The doctor has indicated she shouldn't be living alone. Tempest, your mom should not be living alone. Based on that description alone, I can tell you, based on almost 30 years of experience working with people with dementia, your mom's not safe to be living alone anymore. I know that is super hard to hear, and I'm so very sorry that it has taken this long to actually get to this point where you maybe have more of a definitive diagnosis. And you say your mom doesn't want to hear it. Any recommendations on how to handle her anger or delusions? I don't want to argue. And then this is the real the crux to me of this whole thing is I don't want her to live in a fantasy world. Some things she's saying aren't actually happening, and she swears they are. So that is why I used the word validation. So Tempest, let's talk about that for a second, right? So I want you to picture, take 3 sticky notes. Okay, I want you to picture taking 3 sticky notes, and I want you on those sticky notes, and you guys can do this as an activity, right? I want you to take those 3 sticky notes, and I want you to write down on each of those 3 sticky notes 3 memories. 3 memories, okay? Good memories, bad memories, what you had for breakfast memories, 3 things that you remember. I want you to write them down, Tempest, on 3 different sticky notes. So now, after you have written them down on 3 different sticky notes on the table there, I want you to take one of them and I want you to tear them up and throw them in the trash. They're gone. They're gone. They don't exist anymore, right? And so that is what happens when people lose their memories. Whatever was written on that sticky note is gone. Now, you sitting there watching somebody tear up that sticky note, you remember what's written on that sticky note. But for that person, it's gone. It didn't exist. It's gone. So when you, Tempest, say you don't want your mom to live in a fantasy world, it's that you are aware. You are aware of what the reality is. Your mom, her reality has changed. She literally, it's like that sticky note. It was never there. It never existed for her. So trying to take her where she's at and bring her to you, which is what we used to do, trying to reorient people, say it's 2021, today is 9/11, it's the anniversary of the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, trying to bring her back to you and your reality is not going to work. You can get into her reality, but trying to bring her back to your reality is not going to work. And that's where validation comes in. You validate what she's saying. How does that make you, tell me about it. Why don't you tell me about it? So she says, her mom is living in a fantasy world. So I'll just make something up. Maybe her mom is saying something like, I went to the grocery store today, etc. Now, now I'm just going to play a little role play, right? And now Tempest says to her mom, Mom, that's not true. You haven't driven in 6 months, right? Well, now I want to fight. Fight me. What do you mean you told me I haven't? I drove. My memory that I've not driven is not there. In my mind, I truly am still driving, right? So how do I change that reality? How do I go into her world? So Tempest's mom says to her, I drove to the grocery store today and I bought this and this and this and I did this and I did this. Well, why didn't you tell me about it, Mom? And I tell the story a little further. Oh, I got the most beautiful, beautiful purse. I love purses. It was wonderful. So tell me about it, Mom. What color is the purse? And her mom doesn't get all wild and woolly and angry because you're arguing with her. So this plays into the whole trying not to reason with somebody with dementia, right? It doesn't help you try to reason with someone with dementia if they truly cannot remember what's going on. Because like the analogy I used at the beginning of the 3 sticky notes where you write 3 memories down and the person with dementia, we take one of those memories and we tear them up and we throw them in the trash, they're gone. So Tempest, what I would recommend that I need you to hear 2 things from me today. More likely than not, your mom is not safe to be living home alone, which puts you in a very tough position because it sounds like this is kind of crept up on everybody and it's like, boom, wow, it's here right now. But your mom likely is not safe to be home alone anymore. And then the second part of it is, I want you to join her world and not try to make her join your world anymore, because that will help cut down on her anger, her frustration, her fear. It must be one must feel extremely scared and anxious if everything that you knew to be true was slowly being like a sticky note thrown away. And so I can just imagine how your mom is feeling. And remember, your mom is like a physical sponge right now. She is going to suck up all of your emotions. So if you're like this every time you get to her because you're seeing what's going on, she's going to suck it up and get like this, right? So I hope that's helpful. If you're watching this live, comment live. If you're watching this on the replay, please comment in on the replay. I ran out of time this morning. I would invite you, if you've watched this, thank you for watching this. Please join my group called Think Different Dementia Education Group. It is there for education, for dementia education. My background in training is an occupational therapist. I specialize in dementia, in case you cannot tell. I hold several specialty certifications in dementia. I thank you for being here today. The Lord bless you and keep you is how I end all of my productions every day. Thank you. Bye.